Welcome to You're on Mute Studios and this episode of Let's Make Millions. Managing partner Bill Raymond sitting next to me. I'm CEO of Canella Media, Rob Medved. Today's guest was an old friend, 20 plus years in the industry.
Yeah, and Gary Hewitt, we would not be sitting here today if he didn't make this intro.
Yeah, he's the reason we're here. And in our formative years, one of our biggest clients, I look back and Gary and Doug spent probably about $400 million in marketing with us over the years, promoting some of the most iconic how to make money in real estate courses, IP courses in the history of direct response.
Yeah, I remember days where it would be, guys, we need $1 million more this week in media.
You'd have
like
to go spend
$1
$1
million, and that was over 10 years ago. So in today's, what is that? By like 1.3, 1.4, huge amounts.
Crazy. So an incredible marketing mind. He grew up in a household where direct marketing was instilled in him at an early age with his dad doing print direct marketing. He talks about credit card insert marketing. He talks about print marketing. But at the end of the day, I think the thing I took away most from this is the fact that direct marketing core principles have not changed. And if you're a young direct marketer today, you have to listen to this episode because there are nuggets there that, at the end of the day, keep it simple, right? There's stuff that you got to stick to in order to be successful. And Gary nails it.
Yeah. And I also think he spoke about of course, everyone wants those big hits. I mean, who doesn't? But when you have a hit, it takes all the resources that you have. And if something goes sideways, well, then you don't have anything. And, through what he's been through, he would rather have a lot of, first base, second base hits instead of those home runs.
Yeah.
Because it just keeps the business a lot more stable.
Yeah. And you don't have all your eggs in one basket
if
something goes wrong. Yeah. Okay. Well, stay tuned for that. And also as part of Let's Make Millions, we also have a facet called Let's Give Millions. And where we donate on behalf of our guest to the charity of their choice. And Gary's charity of choice is Hadassah. And Hadassah has been around for over 100 years. And they are advancing women's health. They're supporting a strong Israel. And they are instilling Jewish values. And so we're happy to donate on Gary's behalf to Hadassah. Okay, stay tuned. You'll learn a lot.
Get up on your feet, this is a shakedown. And you can rock and roll with an attitude. So good, so fresh, just the way you like it. So good, so fresh.
Let's jump right into it. I'm gonna do the preamble here by saying that we've known Gary. You've known him longer than I have. We've known Gary and your partner Doug for decades now. You are a legend in direct response.
Okay.
We've spent probably close to, I'm going to say about $500 million on television with you over time.
It was a lot.
It's close to that.
Yeah,
it's between 300 and 500 million. I looked up the numbers.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
Yeah, and really almost all of that entirely in the real estate business opportunity space.
Yeah.
So you were behind some of the biggest real estate opportunity stuff in the 90s and early 2000s, including Amazing John Beck, Jeff Paul Systems, Brad Richdale, on and on.
It's the core principle, right? It's as long as you're hitting one of the main things that people want, whether it's greed or vanity.
Yep.
Any of those core principles, they never go away.
Ever.
And everybody thinks they found the secret sauce. Well, we're probably going to talk a little bit about history in this. Well, the sauce has been around a long time.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, if you look at Ron, who runs our e-commerce, we had a revenue summit, and he pulled up ads from the 30s, 40s, 50s, print ads, and it was the same hook. Like, it's all about the ad copy. It's all about meeting an emotional want or need of a consumer,
right,
with something that they can feel like they see themselves in, before and afters, testimonials. And it's all aspirational. I want to lose weight. I want to get rich. I want to make money. I want to cook easier. I want to make a great meal for my family. Whatever it may be, it is those core principles in direct marketing that have stayed over the decades.
Yeah, and the minute people move away from any of those core principles, they start talking about analytics and things that don't make anybody any money, and it's sort of excuses of not having the right headline or picture.
Yeah.
Right? And you're right. It goes all the way back.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it today, I think the biggest difference is from even like when I started was there was only so many channels where you'd put something up that is more wider catching for the consumer. I think these days, especially on social, people are so used to seeing what they want to see, and that's why you have to have so many different creatives and so much more content to hit those different segments of people from whatever their overall interest is.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and in digital, we can target more, so we can
Correct.
segment that audience already, as opposed to television, which is what we did all of our business in, which is really just mass market. It's like it's the back of the newspaper page. Like you got everybody, you're paying for everybody to see it, so you better be marketing to most people.
Yeah.
Because if you're selling, a saddle conditioner for your horse or whatever, you're not going to get enough sales.
Hey, I think I did sell that.
Right? Well, that's a good segue. Let's go back. So how did you? Where did you grow up? You grew up on the East Coast.
Yeah, I grew up in. We were living. I was born in Boston. My father. I guess I sort of followed in my father's footsteps in a way. I think we all do in one way or another. My father owned a small pharmacy outside of Boston. I think it was a little too claustrophobic for him, so he sold it, and he got into the correspondence school business. So correspondence school was online education before there was online. But back in those days, there was 3, maybe 4 TV stations in a market, right? So TV was just not an option. So
you learned direct response principles
from my father,
from your dad.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I never really thought about it because who thought about that? But
you grew up around it.
I did grow up around it. So went to school. My best friend in high school moved also. I met him in Virginia, but he moved from Boston, and we instantly connected. We went to the same college, university together, and we were roommates at school. And he got out a little earlier from college than I did because I had a really good time in school.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, he went to work for Ringling Brothers Circus. When I got done, he said,
"Wait, what era is this? What year is this? Is it in the 70s?"
Yeah, this is 1978.
So Ringling Brothers traveling, they had circus that would travel around the country, right?
Yeah, they had 2
elephants and trapeze artists, the whole thing.
Yeah, they had 2. They had 2 circuses, a red and a blue, and they were in the, the 100-car trains.
Yeah.
Traveled all over the country. And in 78, they also bought an ice show. So we were not only doing circuses, but ice shows. So
you went to work for the circus?
I went to work for Ringling Brothers. The
says so
circus, what I was an advance man for the circus, doing, advertising, promotion, public relations. And in those days, we did all of the ticketing because there wasn't any computerized ticketing. We settled the box office and paid the building. I learned a lot about advertising and promotion. The circus itself did all of the creative, but you learned what worked. You knew every radio station in the market. You knew every TV station in the market. And you had to track the response via, through ticket sales, right? So some of the core principles of direct marketing were still being used because the end result was butts in seats. Okay, that was it.
Were you using the same vendor in each market when you were buying inside those markets, or were you actually doing were you calling like the radio stations and TV stations and getting the ads up, or were you guys using different vendors in
every market was different. Some markets we had advertising agencies. Some markets just went in and you did it yourself. I got off the road. I had an old girlfriend in Baltimore whose father owned a piece of a company. I spoke to her father put me on the phone with this guy. So I spoke to him, one of the craziest people I had ever met. And he was doing a promotion on TV called Santo Gold, which was gold bracelets on television, and it was back in the day of COD, which is, for those of you out there who don't know what that is, that's cash on delivery.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of direct response TV back in the day.
Yeah.
So what that meant was is through the post office, you could send an item out, and the postal service would collect the money for it for you.
So what, were you getting paid by the post office then?
Well, yeah. I mean, you'd send out, 5,000 COD packages, and every day, you'd get X amount, thousands of checks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot of us in the early days of the business, that was the business, because credit cards and credit card processing, we used to do a lot of checks in the mail.
Yeah.
The whole, it just was just starting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
The guy had 13 known aliases, and
And he's selling gold bracelets.
and there was more gold.
So what was the creative like? I mean, what was it? It was like, here's this beautiful Santo gold bracelet.
Well,
Call
he had
now.
a jingle, Santo Gold.
What
Santo
year was
Gold.
this?
80.
You know what?
86, 85.
I honestly remember
Of course you do.
hearing it. And then, like, it was big.
It wasn't big. It was 10 to 15,000 orders a day.
Do you remember what the...
And so he said to me, he goes, "What do you know about direct response?"
Wait a minute, time out. Is he doing 10 to 15,000 gold bracelet sales? Are they gold, first of all? Are they really gold? 14 karat, whatever.
Well, there's more gold in the air
Yeah.
you breathe.
Okay.
He goes, "I need somebody to manage my operations and do my operations." He goes, "I'm the creative guy." I didn't really know anything about direct response, really. I knew a little from my dad, but I was never involved really on the marketing side of that.
Yeah.
The day I interviewed for the circus job, when he says, "Can you promote?" I said, "Absolutely." I had no idea what I was saying yes to, because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I said the same thing to him. So I jumped in. I actually became intoxicated
Yeah.
with the direct response business.
I think all of us have. I mean, when you're, it is, it's so unique in the sense that every day is a gamble, right? You don't know what you're going to get. You're putting a lot on the line. And if you have any kind of ADD or entrepreneurial, piece of you, it fulfills every part of that dream. Every itch is scratched, right?
Well, it is, because the high of a success is like, anything in life. You get really excited in the successes, but and I've done, in my time, I've probably done, I don't know, 1,000 direct response products, maybe more. It's you picking the product. You doing the creative, you sourcing the product, you figuring out what the creative's going to be and where to place the creative. A lot of the creative I ever did, I wrote.
Yeah.
And
I think that's true. Like if you look at the really successful marketers in our industry, a lot of the successful products and a lot of systems, they owned that entire vertical. They owned everything. They owned finding the product, sourcing it, understanding what solution to the mass market problem, understanding the hook, writing the ad copy, directing, executive producing, all of it right down the line. And I would go so far as to say, many times also being in the commercial. When you look at Ron Popeil, when you look at Billy Mays, when you look at Vince Offer, when you look at Shark Ninja, the owners of the product, the creators of the product are oftentimes on camera.
Yeah.
Because you got to have that passion, because nobody is going to watch the details as you should. And nobody has more at risk, right?
Right.
Like at that point, you got all the shekels on the table behind this thing, to your point.
Yeah.
What happens?
so I cut my teeth, and there were crazy times with this guy, because he was, excuse my French out there, everybody listening, but this guy was batshit crazy, right?
Yeah.
So there was a day that we all showed up for work, and the postal inspectors came in and shut us down, right? and he knew it was going to happen, so we're all standing outside, and the postal inspectors, locked up the door. We're like, okay, what's going to happen now? And he goes, "Oh, don't worry about it." And he went to the door next door, opened up the door, went into the next warehouse, moved away a few boxes, opened the door, we pushed away a few boxes, and we brought everything into the next warehouse and never skipped a beat. So I learned a lot. Through that, I met a bunch of people in the industry, right? That was back in the day when lists were really valuable.
Yeah, the
right?
list of consumers that had bought the product.
Right.
You knew that they were direct response people.
Right.
You knew kind of demographically where they were and what they might be interested in.
Right.
So if you had the right list
Right.
with the right product, you could mine those fields and send them more.
Oh, yeah.
more,
You could make more gold.
A lot more gold.
Yeah.
So, so I got friendly with the list brokers and learned that business. And at that time, the list brokers, of course, were connected with everybody in the direct response business.
Yeah, because there was nobody generating names like DR, right? I mean,
It was the only place
when you're spending, whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars a week, $1 million a week on television or in print,
Well,
you're
that-
generating a lot of names.
And that was back in the day when, $5 cost per order was no big deal. I
Amazing.
mean, that because,
Amazing.
For a $30 product, $20 product.
20.
Yeah,
And
$20
even
product.
we did some $10 products early in the mid 80s. We did some $10 products. And we were getting $1 CPO.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, when you think
$2
about, so
CPOs.
just so everybody can understand, in direct-to-consumer advertising, short form, like so you're talking about a 2-minute commercial or less, or even print back in the day, whatever. There was a price point of about $19.95 that has always been a sweet spot. It's like it's an
Always.
impulse buy. It's not enough money that I care about, but there, it's still enough money to be able to make a product work that it has a cost of goods that's $2, $3, $4. And so when you're promoting a product like that, you have to evaluate your media return on investment by a metric called MER, ROI, or CPO, cost per order. What can I spend to acquire a customer?
Right. I moved to New York. I got hired by a company, a direct response company, who did credit card inserts. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm sure 3/4 of the people out there listening don't know what that is. So when you used to get your credit card bill at the end of every month,
In the mail.
In the mail, right, there would be 4-color, 3-fold brochures in there, and the envelope would have a product offer on it. So whether it was Visa, MasterCard, your oil company credit cards, retail credit cards. So I went to work for the largest company in the country that did those credit card inserts. And it was an enormous business because what it was, Visa and MasterCard stuff did okay. American Express did really well. But the oil companies were gold. And why? Because now people could buy products on their oil company credit card other than gas, right? So it was expanding their credit,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's where I learned to go overseas and source products because we sold a lot of shit. And then at that same time, the infomercials just started happening.
So this is mid-'80s, mid to late 80s, yeah.
Mid
84.
84. Yeah. Infomercials.
Because Reagan had deregulated
right.
a lot of the federal government. And Reagan came in 84 and said, look, we want less government control. He was all about small government, not big government. And one of the things he did was say, deregulate the airwaves. You are no longer restricted to the amount of commercial time that you can run during a program. You could run as many commercials as you want back to back, and hence the birth of the long-form infomercial.
Well, what also happened, too, was there were very few national cables at the time. It was just beginning to happen. There was the Nashville Network, and there was some others. Everybody went dark at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. So from midnight to 6 a.m., it was the test pattern. Mm-hmm. All right. So when Reagan deregulated it, some very savvy people went and bought that time. They bought that 6 or 8 hour block of time, and nobody knew what to charge for it. So
$1.
Well, and maybe less. I mean, because who knew?
Well, yeah, because Frank Canella was one of the people that started doing that, and he always says it was Nielsen. All advertising was bought basically by Nielsen's ratings. The value of the commercial media was dictated by that. And he said in the books, Nielsen just put hashtags in the overnights because everybody assumed nobody was watching TV. Who's watching TV at 1 a.m? Nobody is. You got everybody that can't sleep. They're bored. What are they doing? They're watching TV. Everybody's third shift. What are they doing? They're watching TV, and they have nothing else to do.
And back then, there was nothing else to do.
And to your point, there's no content to compete with. So the infomercials, the direct response commercials, was all there was.
Right. And so my partner was on the road doing seminars. My old partner, Doug, he was doing seminars on how to make money in blackjack. They had this seminar, and he put it on, I think it was the Nashville Network, one of the first guys to do it, right when it deregulated.
And you're talking about the how to make money in blackjack seminar?
Blackjack.
Okay.
Okay. They ran it once, became millionaires. One time.
One time.
So
it was a half hour.
I think it was a little longer at that
Longer,
time, because
maybe an
the
hour
time
long.
didn't matter.
So it was on a national cable network where you've got an audience of
Who knows?
250 million people potentially. Not a lot of competition. There's no social media. There's no other TV channels.
There's no competition.
20 stations.
And they were in it once.
Once.
And you think that they drove millions in revenue off of that one.
Yeah.
One single airing.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was a long airing.
Yeah, I think it was actually I think it was Bobby Singer's pitch. I think it was his pitch from the stage that they had recorded.
And this is the 80s. It's a lot of money today.
Yeah. So it didn't take long for the word to get out. And then, the Canellas of the world were made and other people. So, but I was still doing the credit card inserts. And so at the time, I was aware of short form TV because I come out of that and the successes there. And I was also very aware what was going on in the infomercial world, but I didn't have a way of knowing what was going on in the infomercial world. So through one of my list brokers, I became very friendly with some people out here on the West Coast. That was the Jordan Whitney report.
Oh, really?
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that was the birth of the monitoring, the Billboard Top 40 of direct response, so to speak.
Yeah, it was me.
And what were you monitoring for? I mean, naive question.
Okay, not a naive question at all. A very simple rule of thumb, right? If you see it more than a couple of times,
they're making money.
It's a hit.
If it's an astute marketer, it's making money.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that still holds true today.
Yeah.
Social media, anywhere.
Yeah.
If you see a direct response commercial, more than a handful of times, because the chances of you seeing it and it not airing thousands of times is very low. So if you see it as a general consumer a few times, it's probably a hit.
And before we move on from Jordan Whitney, they would use that as if they would look at the report and say, if it's on the report, then they're spending a lot of money, and then they would take it into retail. We would work with multiple marketers where we knew exactly where they ran and where they would monitor it, and we would air more media on those stations to make it look like even if we weren't spending $200,000 a week, we would air on those stations to make it so it would come up, so clients would
just to force retail. Yeah,
exactly.
I wanted it because I needed to feed my direct response business.
Gotcha. So you were looking for products.
I was looking for products and
to put in the credit card inserts.
Credit card inserts, and quite shortly after I got involved with them, we got bought out by another company which owned all of the unsold space in Parade Magazine. And at that time, Parade Magazine, which was the magazine that came in everybody's Sunday newspaper, was the largest single circulation publication in the country. It was 44 million homes a week, which dwarfed every other print medium by far.
Yeah.
Okay? It was a product monster. Okay? And we had a lot of space available every week. Not only did we need our own products, but we needed the big direct response
Right, you
products.
want the successes.
You're right.
And so you controlled that ad space.
We owned it.
Yeah, so you were looking products to fill the funnel, and were you selling it to them, or were you running it as a marketer? Were you making a bigger margin, I guess? Because an agency makes a commission, a marketer makes all of the commission.
Okay, so it was a hybrid deal in terms that we guaranteed them all of the unsold space. The magazine had to be, multiples of 4, right? So if they had enough content for X, we'd fill up, whether they needed 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages more, we were always there. And then based on their layout, sometimes it was half pages, sometimes it was quarters, sometimes it was eighths, sometimes it was national full page spreads.
This is incredible experience because when I started in this business, I started in television. But when you are running in a business that gets to see what is successful, what are all the successes, you see that pattern that you talked about earlier, which is keep it simple, stupid. Direct response is about some very core principles that get repeated again and again and again, regardless of the product.
Right. So the television products became more and more of
The
part
base.
of our mix.
Yeah, and I think the power of television, which still exists today, is that it lifts all boats in the sea. So what you were seeing is also the ancillary effect, which is people had probably seen it on TV. Now they're going to order from Parade Magazine.
Oh, for sure.
Were there products that were working on TV, but you would bring to print and it wouldn't work because you couldn't show it
No.
in the same?
No.
Always worked.
Always worked.
Yeah.
Why? Because television had set the stage. They knew the product. I just needed to give them another vehicle to buy it.
Right.
That's
It's
all.
no different than Amazon today, right?
No.
So Amazon, typically for a product that we run on television, digital, Amazon will command 20, 25% of the order volume. Period.
Yeah.
In a
Yep.
sense, you can't avoid it. We even have products that we go on TV, and it's a continuity product. It'll be a lower price point, yet the consumer will still go to Amazon, pay a higher price point just because it's Amazon. Partly, we get it that day.
They trust
2,
them.
it's a partner of trust.
Crazy.
3, I can return it. It's just, and they make it so easy.
They don't have to put in their credit card.
Yeah.
They just press a button in it.
Yeah.
But to your point, you're creating that brand on television, you're creating that impulse, and then they're just finding another vehicle through which to order it.
Right. That's how I got to know Mike Levy's of the world. I got to know Bill, the Guthrie Rankers of the world, Bill and Greg. I got to know Ron Popeil. He and I were really good friends. I sold a shit ton of his food dehydrators.
And these are all guys in the late 80s, early 90s
Well, they were-
that are making money in direct response television.
Yeah, they're the pioneers of the infomercial business.
Guthrie Ranker behind Proactive Solution, Cindy Crawford's Meaningful Beauty, a client of ours still to this day. Ron Popeil obviously rotisserie chicken cooker,
Well, that was
set it and forget it.
His first big one was his food dehydrator. You know.
And Mike Levy, Positive Response Television,
Yeah.
where he was actually the host, and people looked forward to amazing discoveries. He'd come on stage in his colorful sweater, and he'd sell everything from car polish to an ab product.
Oh, I got a lot of stories of that. Positive Response also had an in-house media division, and Doug Gravink was running it. And so he and I joined up. We stumbled upon doing some products on our own, and we had a lot of products going at one time. You know, we did Men Are From Mars, Women Are From
Oh my
Venus. We
God.
made that work. We did Harry Lorraine's Memory Power. We made that work. We did Marshall Silver, Passion, Profit, and Power. That worked. You know, these were shows that were out there that just couldn't make it on their own because the offer wasn't right, the copy wasn't right, there was stuff wrong with it. We fixed it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Those 3 examples are intellectual property
Books.
Yes.
products, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the baseline for getting into what we know you from and what we started doing a lot of business with later down the road, which is the real estate stuff.
Right. So Doug and I had a mix of 5 or 6 products, and we were just juggling balls and getting nowhere, right? True story. Our accountant at the end of the year goes, "Why are you guys fucking around with this shit? There's one product here that's doing really well for you." But because we had so many things going on, you know, you fall in love with something or you concentrate on something too much.
The focus.
And one thing is just sort of moving it on its own pace and you're not paying attention to it. He goes, all this shit you're doing is losing you money. He goes, this one's
Yeah, and it's true. Direct response is complicated. It's number 1, a lot of cash flow, intensive working capital. We can get into that. But number 2, you really got to know your P&L because revenue does not mean profit. Anybody that knows anything knows revenue does not mean profit. And the margins, they matter. I mean, that's at the end of the day. What do I say? My 2 favorite things in the world are margin and working capital.
Right. So we shifted gears. We wholly concentrated on this one product, which was how to make money with tax liens and tax deeds. And as we started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, we started getting these calls from outbound telemarketing centers wanting our leads. And so we were very cautious, and we gave them some leads. As time went on, you know, the upfront ROI or CPO or however you want, MER, however you started getting to the point where it was what we were, our gross on television was equaling.
It was diminishing.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was equaling what we were spending, right?
Right. You were
So
tapping into all the consumers.
we
You
were
could tap
getting
into it, the value you were willing to
right.
pay.
So we started getting the calls, right? We didn't really understand. We sort of knew what we should be charging for the lead. We weren't real comfortable with disassociating because, we wanted to keep the name and we wanted to keep it clean. But it became very apparent to us when Doug and I were beginning to only be able to afford cheese sandwiches for ourselves, and we'd go out and visit these guys, and they'd pick us up in their Mercedes and Rollses and all this shit and go, okay, something's going on here, right? These guys are making money hand over fist, and we know it's from our leads and what we're charging and what we're getting paid and what we're hearing. We're like not making ends meet, or we're getting close to it. So, okay. So we floated out there.
Because at that point, you're the lead gen for these guys making all the money.
Right. So what became apparent was whoever has the lead is king. Okay? And everybody else is a service provider, right? So we float an offer out there, and they get all excited about the offer, and they're sitting across the table, and this is a true story, and they're across the table, and I go, so did you think about the offer? And he slides a piece of paper across the table, and I open up the piece of paper, and Doug's sitting next to me, and I go, okay. Which was more than what he wanted, more than what we offered him. So I put it down and I go, I think I want you to just give me this situation. Just give me your floor, and I'll pay you a salary, and I'll take over your lease, and
because you controlled the spigot.
Because I owned them.
Yeah,
right.
You with the oil.
So to make a long story short, it was within hours we had our own floor in Utah, right?
Yeah.
So from there we started growing.
And now you got another problem. You got a bunch of butts and seats. You got to manage it, and you got to fill that funnel.
Well, the funnel wasn't hard to fill because once we got our arms around it and we understood what the back end number was worth, and this is going to what today's marketing situation is all about. Is we knew what the lifetime value of that customer was, right?
LTV.
And we knew how long it would take, what we could lose on the front end, and how long it would take to make it up so we could pay for the front end, right? Front end loss and make a profit. And we were lucky in the fact that it was only a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Right? Because with an IP product, unlike a hard product, a consumer good is you got to rush it, you got to get it out there, you got the sharks are going to eat you up on the knockoffs, you got to get it into retail, you got all of this other stuff, right, going on, so you don't have that time to really figure it out and dial it in. But we did. So
and with
plus,
IP, typically you have bigger margin.
Yeah, and back to like a product is you're getting it every 30 days usually, and sometimes you're not making money until the third turn. So a lot more cash flow up front than this.
The turns are the lifetime value, right? So as long as you know what the turn's going to be, you're not as nervous about spending the money. So we had a machine, and we had become essentially the 800-pound gorilla in the IP space. And we didn't pay that much attention to competition, didn't really care. We grew to 1,100 employees in 4 different states.
And I would guess you're spending anywhere between $50 and $100 million a year on TV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
100.
That's competing. That's at the time. That's significant.
Yeah.
Media spend. Today, it's significant media spend.
Well, today's even more.
So we put in, we spent over $2 million on a phone system at the time, which recorded the in, the out, the outs. I had a 30-person customer service department.
So because in the 2000s still, it's not really the advent of the internet. Almost all the orders are coming in through an 800.
Right. So towards the end, which was 2010, 2010 maybe or whatever, or 2012, which to people sounds like ancient history. We were probably doing 30%, 40% of our orders online. Okay, something like that. That was not search. Okay, that was because they would
branded search. It was destination.
It was all direct.
Yeah, you're driving them
It was all
directly to where
direct.
you are.
It was,
and that still is pretty much today. When you create that much brand awareness on television, they're going right to the product.
We had,
and these are thousands of leads coming in.
20,000 leads a week.
20,000 leads a week
Yeah.
coming into your inbound. Now you've spent $2 million to build out the floor in your space to take all the inbound calls.
Well, that was just the phone system. We
Yeah.
we spent another $2 million on a CRM.
And I know you'll want to get back to this later, but as important as the script is to the commercial to get the ad copy right,
Yeah.
the inbound script is just as important.
The inbound script, we spent a lot of time on inbound scripts. We spent a lot of time, because we were generating that much, we spent a lot of time on the upsell. And, the upsell was a continuity. It was really, really good. No, but we couldn't have spent that amount of time. And this is one thing I'm going to get back to, because anybody out there listening, over my time, I've learned a couple of things, and I've been blessed with a couple of things. One of the things I've been blessed with is I've always gotten to work with real luminaries in their industries. I worked with Irvin Feld of Ringling Brothers. Okay, he was the owner of the fucking circus, right? You know, I got to work with Mike Levy with PRTV, a true pioneer. Direct response infomercials. Another thing that I want everybody to understand, when I owned my own company and I had 1,100 employees, there was no job in my company that I hadn't done. Okay, and there was no job that I couldn't do as well or better than everybody working for me. Nobody could ever say to me, "You don't understand, you've never done it," because they knew. And then lastly, I think one of the big things, I was never afraid to hire people who were better than me.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. My technical abilities are less than zero. When you have good people around you who know more than you on things that you need to have done, it only makes you better.
Yeah.
There's never...
agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and there's two underlying principles there that I think you make a very good point of, that I believe in very, very much, which is one, check your ego at the door, right? Do anything and everything all the time, right? Like, know your business inside and out. And two, show up with passion. Nobody's going to care about your business more than you. But in any job, you don't get to the point. You were showing up with passion when you were working for people over the decades. And that continued to be part of who you are to this day. And that's important.
Totally true. I learned early on about ego when I was buying products and I was sourcing products and I was creating products, right? This is a good story. Years ago, my kids went to a school and there was parent-teacher meeting, and all the parents were sitting in this room. A guy walks up to me and goes, "Gary Hewitt," and my wife is sitting next to me, and I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I know you." And I'm looking at him, I go, I have no idea who this guy is, right? And he sits down and he goes, "I'm blah, blah, blah." And I go, "Okay." He goes, "I was in your office in New York." I go, "You were?" He goes, I showed you my product and you said, "Yeah, it'll never work." And I left. And it was Breath Assure, which for a period of time was probably the biggest product in the country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is the ego issue,
Oh,
right?
100%. This reminds me, about 20 years ago, somebody came into our office with a product, and he said, "This is going to change the indoor candle business forever." And he set down a candle, tilted it, and he turned on the bottom, and there was a flickering light. It was just this big fake wax stick there
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
And
It doesn't give off any heat. It doesn't smell good. And I missed the whole ambiance and that it could last forever. And, within 5 years, millions of these things are being sold everywhere.
Hey, look, a couple of things. When you have an infomercial company or a DR company, sometimes it's way better to hit a bunch of singles and doubles than having a home run, because a home run will take your eye off the ball. from your
And it
court
puts a
date.
lot of eggs in
That's a
one
great
basket
point.
then too.
Oh, it can be a killer. Another life lesson is you really, if it's a hard product, this doesn't pertain to it. In the IP world, you really don't want to be the 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah. And you know that
Yeah.
from experience.
Yeah, it would be much preferred to, to figure out a nice nice
Medium.
quiet medium and just sail along.
So, segue. Can we talk about the FTC
Yeah.
a little bit? So, the Federal Trade Commission, they look at our industry. They look at they're out to try and protect the consumer as best they can, and they operate differently today than they did back when you guys ran into some issues. Right today, they need to take a innocent until proven guilty approach more. Back then, right, I think it was more guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, their purpose was, I don't know what it is today, but so the FTC doesn't write laws. They write guidelines. How do guidelines become law? By suing people, the courts then rule, and those rulings become law.
Interesting. And if you're going to sue somebody to make a point and make a law, you're going to sue the 800-pound gorilla.
You need to sue somebody who has the wherewithal to defend themselves. Okay,
And that's where you came in.
that's where we came in.
Yeah. And that was a dire day for all of us.
All of us.
It was a big judgment. And
More for me than for you guys.
Well, yeah.
But we'll talk about that, and that can be a whole separate.
that's public information. Maybe we don't want to say the number, but it was a massive ruling.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I think to this day it's still the biggest.
What was it?
458.
$458 million. That's a big ruling. Yeah.
Which was ridiculous.
Yeah. They were making a point.
Well, yeah, I mean, through that, they shut down all of the real bad actors. The original case had 85 complaints against us, and every one of the 85 complaints in the original complaint against us were from our customers, and I think about 76 of them said, but they gave me my money back.
Yeah, so you return the money.
Yeah,
So let's put this in perspective. First of all, let's start with the fact that you
85.
were employing 1,100 people. Secondly,
Yeah.
85 out of,
One-
100. You've spent hundreds of millions of dollars with us,
85 people out of 1.8 million customers.
Jesus Christ.
and that.
And at that time, AT&T was getting 10,000 complaints to the FTC a day, and they never did
About
it.
their service.
About their service.
Yeah.
10,000 a day.
And when the FTC comes in direct marketing, game over.
It's totally over. You cannot fight.
The legal bills alone are just
Yeah, we spent 7 figures.
Yeah.
Yeah. You cannot win. You
Yeah.
cannot win.
Well, let's get off the FTC. Let's come back to some of the core principles of direct marketing. You've touched on some of them. That stuff doesn't change. You got to, aspirational offering, problem solution, some of the stuff that you said earlier, amazing transformation, testimonials, you got to see yourself in there. But at the end of the day, you have to manage the business, and those are metrics, and those metrics tell you how well you're doing. And you touched on some of that, but why don't you talk a little bit about some of the metrics then, some of the metrics today?
Right. Going back, the metrics the terminology was a little different, but they're the same, right? It's how much did you spend, how much did you bring back? It's simple addition and division. Back in the day, there were far fewer sources. You could get the results just as fast as you can get them today,
Yeah.
right? And in some ways, they were much easier to measure because the sources were individual. When I would.
Yeah. So you mean basically back in the day, it was pure attribution. Like
Pure.
they say attribution now. It's like it's just
Attribution
again,
is a bullshit word.
fancy word. Where did my order come from? Did my
But you knew.
It was one number.
Back then, you knew you had an 800 number, or you were getting a piece of mail.
Yeah, but you knew that 800 number was assigned to the source, right? So when I'd buy KSAT from Bill, that KSAT had its own phone number. And when they ordered from KSAT,
Yep.
right? Okay, now there wasn't any internet back in those days, so that's where nowadays that's where the fuzzy attribution is. I work with a bunch of clients now, and I've got a staff. I've got 4 or 5 people that do all of the SEO, the social media, the PPC, CPC, whatever you call it, the paid ads on all this other place, okay? Google has all of these fancy metrics, right? And, you know, they have their different platforms, and they have their different advertising. They have their Performance Max. They have their ROHAS, where you put in your... Okay, what that does is that's the old Ron Popeil, set it and forget it. Right? Right. So you set it, you forget it. I've noticed it with my own staff. Well, they said that, Google said that it's going to take 4 or 6 weeks, and then it's going to learn.
The algorithm has to learn.
Right. Unless you know how the money you're spending is performing, then you don't know anything, and you probably shouldn't be spending it, right? So the way I've gotten some of the clients that I have and people to listen is let us worry about where it's coming from. Let's sit down, let's figure out what your margin is, your profit margin. Let's figure out how much we can spend in advertising to get you that client. And then let's buy into that. And how we get there and how it goes and how we try and attribute it and all this other stuff that people are hitting you with information doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't.
Yeah. I think a lot of tech tries to complicate things when it doesn't need to be so complex.
Totally.
Yeah. Good. Well, Gary, awesome having you. I mean, legend in direct response for sure, man.
That is not
unbelievable. Doing back then what a lot of people are doing today. So
let me leave all you listeners out there with something, a principle that I live by. Indirect response. Headline, picture. You failed. Headline, picture.
Love it. True DR.
Well, Gary, thank you for coming in today, and I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to work for you back in the day, and I got my start there, so I'm very thankful. It's true, I did. I mean, I did, and I would not be sitting here without you. So thank you.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here today if you hadn't brought us together. So
well, conversely, I wouldn't be here today unless you promised me a tuna sandwich. So it's all good.
You're still eating tuna.
Well, let's go make some millions. Once again, okay?
Let's
all right,
do it.
Good having you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
For more content like this, subscribe to Let's Make Millions and get alerts for all future episodes.